jury trial between technology powerhouse companies Oracle and Google.
This was dubbed the copyright case of the century, and it really involved Google's copying.
When a company is paying you tens of millions per year, if not hundreds of millions, it's probably a good idea to be on their good side. But it looks like Oracle didn't have this common sense, as they would go ahead and sue Google in 2010. If this was some sort of serious issue like a breach of contract or unethical practice, this would have been completely understandable. But this related to a petty copyright issue regarding an open source programming language called Java. Essentially, Oracle was claiming that while Java itself was free and open source, Google's use of Java was violating Oracle's intellectual property rights. And the amount that Oracle was trying to claim? A disgusting $9 billion. At first, you may be swayed to give Oracle a chance, because hey, it's not like Google is a saint themselves. But here's the thing, this is not the first time that Oracle has tried to form a petty lawsuit. Ever since they started acquiring other companies in the late 1990s and especially the 2000s, Oracle has shifted much of their focus to quote-unquote protecting what they have as opposed to creating real value in the marketplace. In fact, Oracle has built up a history of suing anything that moves, and they've become a dreaded patent troll. In most cases, the companies that patent trolls sue simply give in and come to some sort of settlement, because they don't want to waste more energy or effort in actually defending themselves. But this was not the same case with Google. For Google, it wasn't even about the money. If it was, they could have easily settled in the early 2010s for far less than $9 billion. And this would have likely been cheaper, not to mention less stressful, than waging an 11-year-long battle against Oracle that escalated to the Supreme Court. But Google had no other choice because Oracle wasn't just targeting Google. Oracle was looking to set a precedent that they could sue anyone for using Java in a way that they didn't like. Also, if Oracle was able to set this type of precedent, it was just a matter of time until other companies tried to set similar precedents with their own programming languages, whether that be TypeScript, Swift, or C#. So Google had to step up to the plate not just for themselves, but for the developer community as a whole. So here's the story of how Oracle sued Google, only to regret it for the rest of their lives. Taking a look back, this whole saga can be traced back to early 2009, when Oracle started trying to buy out Sun Microsystems. If you're not familiar with Sun Microsystems, they were a tech giant throughout the 1980s and 90s who did everything from producing computer hardware to developing programming languages. They were still massive moving into the 2000s, but the dot-com crash and subsequently the 2008 financial crisis would drag down the company substantially. Pretty soon, Sun started posting quarterly losses, laying off thousands of employees, and running out of cash. Normally, such companies would eventually just go bankrupt, and new up-and-coming companies would take their place. But Sun was different. While their business was getting hammered, they still had a boatload of intellectual property, including Java, as they were the creators of Java. This made them a prime acquisition target, and it didn't take long for larger companies like IBM and Oracle to become quite intrigued. Oracle would end up winning the bid for $7.4 billion in April of 2009, and pretty soon they had their hands on Sun. At first, much of the media speculated that this was a bold expansion strategy for Oracle, as this would be their first step into hardware. While this was a foreign territory for Oracle, it also made sense. Oracle was already the go-to software company for hundreds of thousands of companies, governments, and academic institutions. So maybe they could become the go-to hardware player as well. But from the very beginning, Larry Ellison, the founder and CEO of Oracle, had his eyes on Java. In fact, he even went as far as claiming that Java was the single most important software asset that they had ever acquired. Sun CEO assumed that this was because Java would allow Oracle to offer enterprise solutions at much cheaper prices, but Ellison had a much less honorable plan. Shortly after completing the deal with Sun, Ellison would turn around and sue Google over Android's use of Java. But wait a minute, why didn't Google just get permission to use Java in the first place? Well, first of all, Java is an open source programming language, and Oracle affirms this themselves in one of their blog posts. And second of all, Google actually did ask for permission as soon as they acquired Android in 2005. Sun wanted $30 to $50 million in return for letting Google officially use Java, which really wasn't a crazy ask. Google was willing to pay this, no problem. But money wasn't the only condition. Sun wanted Google to make all of their implementations of Java compatible with the Java Virtual Machine and other Java programs. This was a deal breaker for Google. All Google wanted was a fork of Java that they could build upon. But Sun was basically trying to get Google to support Java indefinitely. To no surprise, this deal would fall through, but Google would move forward nonetheless. After all, Java is open source, so getting permission was really just more of a courtesy. Sun knew that they couldn't reasonably challenge Google, so they just went about their day. But Oracle had other plans. Google went ahead and created their own programming platform that was strongly inspired by Java, and they tailored it to be used with mobile devices. But wait a minute, what did Google even copy? I mean, you can't just copy a programming language itself, right? Well, that's right, you can't really copy a language itself, but you can copy things that are built off that language. In the case of Google, they copied Java's API packages. If you're not familiar with APIs, they're basically just code that can be used to establish communication between servers and devices in a predefined manner. For example, let's say you want this cool Twitter integration on your website. You could try to replicate Twitter's codebase, or you could just call a Twitter API and have this section appear magically. Java had dozens of such APIs that made their virtual machines and programs substantially more accessible to developers. Given that Google wanted to make Android as easy and familiar as Java development, they not only copied 37 Java APIs, but they also gave them the same names. We should note that they created way more on their own, as their total library would end up including 168 API packages. Not to mention, much of the implementation code was different as well. But nonetheless, Google ended up with 11,500 lines of copied code, and this would become the basis of Oracle's entire lawsuit. The lawsuit would make its way to the jury about a year and a half after the lawsuit was filed. At first, the jury had a bit of trouble coming to a conclusion. They established that, yes, though limited, Google had copied portions of Java. The real question, though, was whether this was covered by fair use, which was a much more difficult question to answer. But after seeing a couple of presentations from Google regarding how they modified and altered Java, the jury would have an easy time siding with Google. The final verdict was that as long as the specific code written to implement a method is different, anyone is free under the Copyright Act to write his or her own method to carry out exactly the same function or specification of any and all methods used in the Java API. So you would think that this was an open and shut case, right? Well, no, as Oracle would of course appeal, which escalated the case to the Federal Circuit, who looked at the case from a completely different perspective in early 2014. Instead of trying to determine whether or not Google's use was fair, this court decided to focus on whether APIs were copyrightable. And they would end up ruling that Oracle's API packages were indeed creative, original, and resembled a taxonomy, and therefore they were copyrightable. Google obviously couldn't accept this, so this time they would appeal. Their argument was that the copyrightability of Java was irrelevant. The question should be whether or not Google's use was fair, and the Second District Court would agree with Google's stance in 2016. Just because Java was copyrightable did not mean that Google infringed on said copyright. Now the ball was back in Oracle's court, and they would of course appeal once again, which takes us to 2018. This time, the court would side with Oracle on the basis that Google's use of Java was commercial, and thus it was not eligible to be covered by fair use. At this point, Google had 2 wins and Oracle had 2 wins, and there was only one way to settle this debate once and for all: the Supreme Court. This was no longer just a battle between 2 companies playing corporate games. This was a tech phenomenon, as a win for Oracle would usher in an era of restrictive development. In fact, this battle was so monumental that the entire tech world would get involved, and they would all rally behind Google. This included Microsoft, Mozilla, Red Hat Inc., IBM, the Computer and Communications Industry Association, the Internet Association, and even the Auto Care Association. We also saw 72 intellectual property scholars and 93 computer scientists throw their hats in for Google. Meanwhile, the only notable organization that backed Oracle was the Trump Organization. And I think the only reason they supported Oracle was because they wanted Oracle to play into their TikTok takeover plan. So, little to say, the cards were very much stacked against Oracle. And this is very much how the Supreme Court felt as well, as they would side with Google in a 6-2 majority opinion. The bottom line was that copyright laws were created to incentivize the progress of science and useful arts. The idea is that if inventors are able to enjoy exclusive financial benefits for an extended period of time, they would be more likely to invent great things. But Oracle wasn't trying to invent or progress. They were being patent trolls and preventing further progress just so that they can make even more money. And therefore, Google's limited copying of the Java SE application programming interface constituted a fair use of that material under copyright law. We should note, however, that Justice Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito dissented with the majority. They felt that by copying Oracle's code, Google erased 97.5% of the value of Oracle's partnership with Amazon, made tens of billions of dollars, and established its position as the owner of the largest mobile operating system in the world. And thus, Google should be held accountable for damages. But given that 6 justices sided with Google, that ended up being the final verdict. So in the end, Google came out on top, which was a massive win for developers and the tech industry at large. But even if Oracle had won the legal battle, it would have still been a loss for Oracle as a whole. Here's the thing. Companies don't pour billions of dollars into programming languages and offer them for free out of the goodness of their hearts. They do this to encourage adoption and popularity, which will in turn give them influence and control, which can then be monetized. So creating a programming language, or any platform for that matter, is very much a long-term game. But Oracle got caught up in the short term and tried to milk Google for fast profit. And now they're gonna have to pay for that indefinitely. For obvious reasons, companies and developers will be hesitant of working with Oracle because they don't want to get caught up in a Google situation. And we can already see the impact. After holding the #1 spot in terms of popularity for over a decade, Java fell to #3. And it's likely that this trend will simply continue, as the sentiment is very much turning against Java. Also, it's not just Oracle's programming business that will suffer either. Companies will think twice before doing any sort of business with Oracle. Google, for instance, is slowly switching to SAP, and this seems to be a larger industry-wide trend. And given Oracle's history, you can't really blame them. And that's how Oracle's smug decision to sue Google destroyed their reputation. Are you Team Google or Team Oracle? Comment that down below. Also, drop a like if you're not a fan of patent trolls. And of course, consider checking out our Discord community to suggest future video ideas and consider subscribing to see more questions logically answered. But until then, I'm Hari, and I'll see you guys on the next one.